What is up, everybody? Mr. Purtis here. Welcome to Unit 7.2. We're going to do a little bit of the fighting of World War I. This is considered to be the first modern war, and I mentioned this in the last video, but not really specifically. When this war is being fought, after this war breaks out, it is generally referred to as the Great War. So when this war breaks out between our two alliances, which is the Central Powers versus the Allies, we're really going to see everyone refer to it as the Great War, and many consider it to be the war to end all wars. They think this will be the last war ever fought, and unbeknownst to these people, 20 years after this war ends, World War II breaks out, which is when we refer back to this as World War I, because if you have a second, you got to have a first. Again, this is 1900 to present. I guess we could call it circa if you want to get crazy. So here's the deal. This war, when it starts, being the first modern war, when this war starts, it is considered to be a total war. And this term total war is going to come up in World War II as well. And unlike wars today, I think, in like kind of this really 21st century war, these wars in the early and mid 20th century, the 1900s, involve everybody. And by everybody, I mean, even if you aren't a soldier, even if you're not on the front lines, you are expected to somehow participate and be involved in this. So if you are a grandmother back living in London, you are expected to participate by doing something as well. If you are in the colonies, you're expected to participate. So if you're in India, if you are in Australia, you are expected to be part of this war effort as well. It is not just the people who are fighting on the front lines. And that's very different than, I think, the mentality of what we see in the 21st century with war, where people who are on the home front almost forget that there are still soldiers fighting in wars, especially in many Western countries. So the first part about this is, in this total war, is number one, and this is the key, I think the key to a lot of the rest of this Unit 7 and Unit 8, so something to kind of star here, is colonial and what we consider to be oppressed people. The colonies, who are colonies from imperialism, are told by their mother country when this war starts that if you send soldiers, if you help us in this war effort, if you produce what we need you to produce, and again, if you send soldiers to help out this war effort, we will give you your independence when we're done. So we have a lot of people who are going to be sent to Europe, or they're fighting in their own country, who are, for example, Indian soldiers. We have Nigerian soldiers here. We have Australian soldiers. We have the Harlem Hellfighters. And reminder, in the United States at this time, African Americans are tremendously discriminated against. So we have these groups who are really being treated unfairly, who are going to be told, if you help, when we're done, you'll get your independence. And when they do, when the war ends, I don't want to give it away, don't tell anybody, they're not going to get their independence. Their mother country is going to say, you're not quite ready for this yet. So it's going to lead after this war, which we'll get to in Unit 8, to this rise in nationalism where people say, hey, you promised it to us, why didn't we get it? Another thing with total war that we see is factories in Europe are going to be transformed from producing consumer goods, cars, trucks, things along those lines, to producing military goods. And since so many men are going to go off to fight during this war, many women are going to enter the workforce. And when this war is over, again, don't want to give too much away, men are going to come back and take these jobs back from women, and the women are going to say, essentially, look, we did all this for the war. Why don't we have the right to vote? And we're going to see the rise of suffrage, or the right to vote for women after this war. So factories are going to produce goods, women are going to re-enter the workforce. Number 3, we have reducing food consumption, so there's more for the war. So essentially they're going to say, in these governments, in these countries, we're going to reduce the amount that you should consume and eat within your own home and what you buy. So eat less, so we have more food for the soldiers on the front line, because our country can only produce so much food, and if you eat more than you should, that's less that can go to our soldiers. So on the home front, again, at home, you could be working in factories, and you're also going to reduce food consumption. We're also going to see rationing, which is where the government says you can only buy a certain amount of sugar, or you can only buy a certain amount of grains to make bread. There's only so much that you're allowed to buy as an individual, and we will give you a card where you give us a stamp to show that you've used your ration for the month or whatnot, and then we have enough to send so our soldiers on the front lines are well fed and they can fight effectively against their enemy. Number 4, we also see what is called propaganda and ultranationalism. We'll talk more about propaganda in class, but the main form of propaganda during this time, there's 2 things. One, we're going to see it in movies, but also in propaganda posters. So these posters would be things that you would see around your country on light posts or on buildings to try to convince people that this war is good. Propaganda is ideas. They could be true, they could be false, but it's a way to convince people of a message. And they're generally in this time ultra-nationalistic. So we're going to present our enemies as barbarians or gorillas or like King Kong here, like Germany is. And we're going to present our country as ideal and perfect to show why we should go and kill soldiers from these other countries. So that's this idea of total war. There's 4 pieces to it. These same 4 pieces are going to transfer into World War II as well. And it's this idea that the AP World people love you to know, and it's really important, which is this idea and concept of a total war. This war is going to be fought on 2 major fronts. And again, we'll talk a lot more about the specifics of this in class because this is not as detailed. We don't need too much detail on this for the actual exam, but in terms of your notes, just want to let you to know that there's 2 fronts. There's the Western Front here, which is primarily the mother country, the countries of Britain and France. There's going to be some of their colonial soldiers, remember, coming as well, who are going to fight mainly against Germany and Austria-Hungary here on the Western Front. And then we also have this large Eastern Front here, which is fought between Russia primarily, and then Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire are all over here. The Western Front is trenches. They're going to dig into the ground and fight in these little ditches almost that are hundreds of miles long, which are called trenches. And then on the Eastern Front, because it's so cold over on this side, you can't dig trenches and work out of this. So this is more kind of open battlefields, kind of your traditional warfare on the Eastern Front. It's longer, it's colder. This is more rainy, a little bit warmer, but these are the 2 areas where it's fought. If you're the Central Powers, you're really at a disadvantage because you have to split your soldiers between the Western Front and the Eastern Front, which is going to be one of the issues that they're going to face. In terms of, and I know we're kind of going really quick through a 5-year important war, but just in terms, we'll spend more time, like I said, in class, but in terms of death totals, this is the number of casualties, the number of people who died in each country. So you can see we have 1.3 million died in France. We're going to have 4.2 wounded. That's 6 casualties refers to deaths and wounded. So we have 6.1 million casualties. That's 73% of France's soldier population either died or were wounded in battle. And if you want to pause this, you can look at it. The biggest total, kind of the most dramatic, is Russia. 1.7 million died, 4.9 million wounded, 9 million dead or wounded, and that's a 76% casualty rate, which is very high, and it's going to lead to problems in Russia later when Russia gets out of this war early. We also have Italy, Japan, the United States here. You'll see for Japan and the United States, their numbers are a lot lower. Even Italy's a little lower than Russia and Great Britain here, because these 3 are going to join the war late. They're going to join on the side of allies, and they're all promised land if they join. And if you want to look over here at the casualties for the Central Powers, 1.2 million died in Austria-Hungary, 1.7, and you can see the 90% casualty rate of soldiers in Austria-Hungary, which is outrageous. So 9 out of 10 soldiers who went to go fight in this war are going to either die or wounded for Austria-Hungary. In terms of why it's so deadly, we have all of these new inventions from the Second Industrial Revolution. We have tanks, we have airplanes, grenade launchers, flamethrowers. This war is not fought like the 1800s or 19th century warfare where it is single shot guns on a battlefield or something very simplistic. This is modern warfare with modern technology and things that are designed specifically to kill as many people as possible. So these flamethrowers, these tanks that can get through brush, airplanes which are not dropping bombs yet, by the way, they're mainly used for surveillance. We have these grenade launchers. We're also going to have poison gas that's going to be developed specifically and used by the Germans. You can't smell it, you can't see it, and it makes you blind. We also have these German U-boats, which is Unterseeboots, which is undersea boots, which is under, sea, boots, boat, which are also called U-boats, which are submarines. And then we also have machine guns here. This is going to be the main killer of people in this war. And the way this war is fought is not ideal for soldiers who are running across a field with machine gun fire at them. So that's what I got. Lot of death, a lot of war. We'll get into the specifics of what's going on the Western Front and the Eastern Front in class, but I just want to give you the breakdown, simple stuff, notes, total war, 2 fronts, a lot of deadly weapons. That's what you need to know, and the home front stuff. So you got any questions, you know what to do. Write it down. Let me know.